I won custody. The judge gave me my children. 2 weeks later, she kidnapped them and fled the country. I never thought I'd be writing something like this. For 2 years, I couldn't talk about it. Couldn't even think about it without my chest tightening and tears threatening to spill. But now, sitting in my living room while my kids sleep peacefully down the hall, I feel like I can finally tell this story. Maybe it'll help another parent going through something similar. Maybe it'll just help me process everything that happened. I won custody. The judge looked at the evidence and gave me my children. 2 weeks later, she kidnapped them and fled the country. The beginning of the end. I remember that Friday like it was yesterday. October 14th. The air was crisp, leaves were turning, and I was driving to my ex-wife's apartment to pick up my kids for what was supposed to be my first full weekend with them under our new custody arrangement. I'd waited 18 months for this moment. 18 months of court dates, depositions, guardian ad litem reports, and sleepless nights. The custody battle had been brutal, the kind that leaves permanent scars on everyone involved. I'm not going to pretend I was perfect in our marriage. I worked too much, wasn't emotionally present enough, and probably contributed to her unhappiness in ways I'm still unpacking in therapy. But when it came to our kids, that was never a question. She was neglectful. Not in the dramatic, obvious way you see in movies. It was subtle, leaving our 6-year-old daughter in charge of our 4-year-old son while she went on dates. Forgetting to pick them up from school. Moving them from apartment to apartment every few months because she couldn't hold down a living situation. The kids came to my house hungry more times than I can count. The evidence was overwhelming. Text messages where she admitted she needed a break from being a mom. School records showing our daughter had missed 23 days in a single semester. Reports from neighbors who witnessed the kids playing unsupervised outside at 10 p.m. on school nights. When the judge announced his decision, primary custody to me, supervised visitation only for her, I watched her face transform. The mask of the composed, wronged mother she'd been performing for months cracked completely. Her eyes went hard, cold. She stood up before the judge had even finished speaking and said, clearly enough for everyone in the courtroom to hear, "You'll regret this." I thought she was talking to me. Looking back, I think she was talking to everyone. The disappearance. 2 weeks after the ruling, she called me. Her voice was different, softer, almost apologetic. She said she wanted to take the kids to visit her mother in Arizona before the custody arrangement officially started. Just a week, she said. So they can say goodbye to their grandmother properly. You know how close they are. I was suspicious, but my lawyer assured me it was standard. The judge had approved it. What was I going to do? Say no and look like the vindictive ex-husband everyone expects in these situations? So I agreed. The week came and went. Then 2 days. Then 5. I called her phone, straight to voicemail. Texted, no response. Called her mother. I don't know where she is, the old woman said. Her voice was too steady, too practiced. She left 3 days ago. Said she had something to take care of. I knew then. I knew in my bones that something was terribly wrong. I drove to her apartment building immediately. The parking lot was empty where her car should have been. I ran up the stairs, pounded on her door. Nothing. A neighbor opened his door a crack, chain still on. You looking for her? She moved out. 3 days ago. Saw her loading up a U-Haul with the kids. My heart stopped. Literally, it felt like my heart stopped beating in my chest. The world narrowed to a single point, a dark, terrible point of understanding. She was gone. And she'd taken my children with her. Update 1. The first 6 months, hell. The first few days were a blur of police stations and frantic phone calls. I filed a missing persons report. Contacted my lawyer. Called everyone I could think of who might know something. The police were sympathetic but frustratingly limited in what they could do. Sir, technically she has parental rights. Even with the custody order, this is a civil matter unless she kidnapped my children. Without evidence she's left the state, there's only so much. She's gone. Her apartment is empty. Her mother won't tell me anything. It took 3 weeks for the truth to come out. Her former friend, a woman she'd had a falling out with a month before, contacted me through Facebook. The message was brief but devastating. I don't agree with what she did. She took the kids to Mexico. She's living with some guy she met online. Somewhere near Puerto Vallarta. She changed their names. I'm sorry. Mexico. My 6-year-old daughter and 4-year-old son were in Mexico with a man I'd never met, living under fake names, and I had no idea if they were safe. I learned more legal terms in the following months than I ever wanted to know. The Hague Convention on International Child Abduction. UCCIA, the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction and Enforcement Act. International Parental Kidnapping. Federal warrants. Interpol notices. The process was a nightmare. Mexico is a signatory to the Hague Convention, which meant theoretically there were legal mechanisms to get my kids back. In practice, it meant mountains of paperwork, endless coordination between American and Mexican authorities, and costs that seemed designed to bankrupt me. My lawyer connected me with a specialist, an attorney in Texas who handled international custody cases. The first thing he said was, "This is going to be expensive. And slow. Are you prepared for that?" I would have sold everything I owned. I would have worked 3 jobs. I would have done anything. "Just get my kids back," I said. For 2 years I didn't know if my kids were safe, if they were being fed, if they remembered me. She told them I abandoned them. Update 2. The legal battle, months 7 to 14. The financial reality hit me like a truck. My attorney in Texas needed a $15,000 retainer just to start. The Mexican attorney he recommended required another $8,000. Then there were the private investigators, because despite the Hague Convention, nobody was actively looking for my children. The U.S. Marshals had other priorities. The Mexican authorities had limited resources. If I wanted my kids found, I had to find them myself. I hired a PI who specialized in international cases. $12,000. He located them in 7 weeks, a small town about 40 miles south of Puerto Vallarta. She was living with a man who worked at a resort. The kids were enrolled in a local school under names I didn't recognize. She changed their names, enrolled them in school with fake documents, told everyone she was a widow, erased me from their lives. The confirmation should have been a relief. Instead, it was its own kind of torture. I knew where my kids were, but I couldn't reach them. I had photographs, grainy surveillance shots of my daughter walking to school, my son playing in a dusty yard. They looked okay, healthy, but their faces were different, older. They'd grown so much in the months I'd missed. Armed with the location, we filed for emergency relief under the Hague Convention. The process was supposed to take weeks. It took 8 months. Mexican courts move slowly. American paperwork gets lost in translation, sometimes literally. There were hearings I couldn't attend, legal arguments conducted in Spanish that my attorneys tried to explain over crackling phone connections. Every step forward seemed to come with 2 steps back. Her attorney in Mexico, and yes, she'd hired one, probably with money from her new boyfriend, argued that the children were settled in their new environment, that returning them to the U.S. would be traumatic, that I had abandoned them by not pursuing custody sooner. The lies were breathtaking. This woman who had kidnapped my children, fled the country, and erased me from their lives was now arguing that I was the absent parent. And Mexican authorities, unfamiliar with the full history, sometimes seemed to believe her. There were moments when I nearly gave up. I'm ashamed to admit that, but it's true. Around month 11, sitting in my attorney's office after yet another hearing had been postponed, I felt something inside me break. Maybe she's right, I said. Maybe they're better off there. They're in school. They have friends. They've adapted. Maybe dragging them back here after all this time would just hurt them more. My attorney, a weathered man who'd handled dozens of cases like mine, set down his pen and looked at me with an intensity I'll never forget. "Listen to me carefully," he said. "What you're feeling right now is exactly what she wants you to feel. This is part of her strategy. Every delay, every obstacle, every piece of red tape, it's designed to wear you down until you quit. She's counting on you giving up. She's counting on you deciding that your love isn't worth the fight." But what if? There is no what if. Your children were taken illegally by an unstable parent who has already been found unfit to care for them. They are being raised on lies, with false identities, by a woman who prioritized her own desires over their well-being. That hasn't changed just because time has passed. And your love for them hasn't changed either. Don't let exhaustion convince you otherwise. He was right. I knew he was right. But God, it was hard to keep believing that during the dark nights when the phone didn't ring and the money kept draining and my children felt like ghosts I was chasing through a legal labyrinth. It cost me $80,000. 2 years of lawyers, investigators, international legal battles. All because she couldn't accept that the court said she was an unfit parent. My family helped where they could. My parents refinanced their house. My brother took out a personal loan. I worked overtime until I barely slept, funneling every extra dollar into legal fees. I sold my car, my boat, my coin collection my grandfather had left me. Anything with value went toward getting my kids back. Meanwhile, The U.S. legal system wasn't idle. Federal prosecutors had officially charged her with international parental kidnapping, a felony carrying up to 10 years in prison. There was a federal warrant for her arrest. An Interpol red notice with her name on it. But none of that meant anything as long as she stayed in Mexico and the Mexican authorities didn't cooperate. Update 3. The breakthrough, months 15 to 20. The darkest period came around month 16. I was running out of money, running out of hope, and running out of the ability to pretend everything was okay at work. My boss, a decent man who'd been patient through everything, called me into his office one afternoon. "I know what you're going through," he said. "But your numbers are down. Way down. HR is asking questions." I understood. I'd been barely functional for months. Taking calls from lawyers during work hours. Disappearing for days at a time when I flew to Texas for meetings with my legal team. My mind was never fully present, always half consumed by imagining what my kids were doing at that exact moment. Were they in school? Were they thinking about me? Did they still know my face? I told him the truth. All of it. The kidnapping, the legal battle, the slow grinding machinery of international law that was supposed to protect children but felt designed to trap them in limbo forever. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Take a leave of absence. FMLA. I'll make sure your job is here when you come back." I nearly broke down right there in his office. That leave of absence, 3 months of reduced stress, of being able to focus entirely on the legal battle, may have saved the entire case. It certainly saved my sanity. During that time, I became an amateur expert on international child custody. I knew the Hague Convention articles by heart. I could cite precedents from cases in France, Brazil, Japan. I corresponded with other parents who'd gone through similar nightmares, some who'd gotten their children back, others who were still fighting after 5, 7, even 10 years. One woman I met through an online support group had been searching for her daughter for 8 years. 8 years. Her ex-husband had taken the child to Saudi Arabia, a non-signatory to the Hague Convention, and she had no legal recourse. She'd spent her life savings, mortgaged her future, and still didn't know where her daughter was. Compared to her, I was lucky. Mexico was a signatory. There were legal mechanisms. The system was slow and expensive, but it existed. "Don't ever take that for granted," she told me during a phone call. "At least you have a path. Some of us are just wandering in the dark." I think about her sometimes, even now. I hope she found her daughter. I never got an update. The case turned on something small, a bureaucratic error on her part. She'd been using forged documents for everything. The kids' school enrollment, their Mexican residency paperwork, probably even her own identification. But she got careless. Applied for some kind of government assistance using her real identification number, probably thinking it wouldn't connect back to the U.S. case. It did. The Mexican authorities, who had been cooperative but slow, suddenly had independent evidence of document fraud. What had been a civil custody dispute under the Hague Convention was now also a criminal matter under Mexican law. Her boyfriend's family had connections, but they weren't enough to make fraud charges disappear. The wheels that had been grinding slowly started spinning faster. My attorney called me on a Tuesday afternoon. "We have a hearing scheduled. Final determination. 1 month. 1 month. After 18 months of fighting, I was 1 month away from potentially getting my kids back. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. Every day I marked off the calendar like a prisoner counting down to release. I rehearsed what I would say to my kids. How I would explain the last 2 years. Whether they would even remember me. The PI had gotten me more recent photos by then. My daughter was 8 now, 8, when she'd been 6 when I last held her. She wore her hair differently. Had lost her baby teeth. My son was 6, the age his sister had been when they disappeared. He was taller, leaner, looking more like me than ever. Did they think about me? Did they remember our weekend trips to the zoo, the bedtime stories, the way I used to carry them both at once, one on each hip, when they were tired? Or had she successfully erased it all? I would find out soon enough. Update 4. The recovery, month 21. The week before the final hearing was the longest of my life. I couldn't eat. Sleep came in fragments, an hour here, 2 hours there, interrupted by dreams where I was running through endless corridors, hearing my children calling for me but never finding them. My brother flew out to be with me. We sat up late talking about everything and nothing. Childhood memories, our parents, the future I hoped to build with my kids once this was over. He didn't try to offer false hope or empty platitudes. He just listened. What if they don't remember me? I asked him one night, the fear I'd been carrying for 2 years finally spilling out. What if she's poisoned them so completely that they can't love me anymore? He thought about it for a long moment. Kids are resilient, he said finally. More resilient than we give them credit for. And they know love when they feel it. Even if she told them lies, they'll remember how you made them feel. That doesn't go away. I wanted to believe him. I wasn't sure I could. The final hearing was held in a government building in Guadalajara. I flew down with my attorney, my brother for moral support, and a representative from the U.S. Embassy who had been assigned to help coordinate. She was there too. I hadn't seen her in 2 years, since that day in the courtroom when she'd threatened the judge. She looked different. Thinner. Harder. Her boyfriend sat beside her, a nervous-looking man who kept glancing at the door like he wanted to run. The kids weren't present. Mexican Child Protective Services was holding them at a separate facility while the hearing proceeded. I had been told this was standard, to protect them from the conflict between the adults. It didn't make it easier. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Her attorneys argued their case again, that the children were settled, that returning them would be traumatic, that I was a dangerous presence in their lives. They submitted character witnesses. Letters from the kids' teachers in Mexico. My attorneys presented the evidence. The original custody order from the U.S. court, the 18 months of testimony showing her unfitness as a parent, the forged documents, the federal kidnapping charges, the Interpol notice. DNA test results confirming I was the biological father, because yes, she had tried to claim I wasn't. The Mexican judge, a stern woman in her 60s who had clearly seen cases like this before, reviewed everything. Asked questions. Made notes. Disappeared for 3 hours to deliberate. When she came back, she didn't waste words. The children will be returned to their father. Immediately. I heard a sound, a raw, wounded sound, and realized it was my ex-wife. She was crying, screaming, being held back by her boyfriend. Security moved in. Her attorney was trying to explain something about appeals, about emergency stays. The judge cut them off. There will be no delay. The children leave tomorrow. Update 5. The reunion. They brought my kids to a government office the next morning. I was told to wait in a conference room, something about transitioning them gently, preparing them for what was happening. The door opened. My daughter walked in first. She was tall for 8. God, she'd grown so much, with her mother's dark hair and my eyes. She looked at me the way you'd look at a stranger who claims to know you. "This is your father," the social worker said gently. "Do you remember him?" My daughter's face crumpled. "Mommy said you didn't want us." I broke down. 2 years of holding it together, of being strong, of fighting through every bureaucratic obstacle and sleepless night, and I broke down completely. "That's not true," I managed. "That was never true. I have been looking for you every single day for 2 years. I never stopped. I never gave up. I wanted you so much it hurt to breathe." When I finally found them, my daughter looked at me like I was a stranger. She said, "Mommy said you didn't want us." I broke down crying. My son hung back, hiding behind the social worker's legs. He was 6 but seemed younger, traumatized by everything happening around him. He didn't remember me at all. The flight back to the U.S. was surreal. My daughter sat beside me, not touching but not pulling away either. My son slept against my brother's shoulder. Every few minutes, my daughter would look at me with this searching expression, like she was trying to reconcile the monster her mother had described with a crying man who'd promised to never let her go again. As we crossed back into U.S. airspace, I felt something loosen in my chest. They were home. Finally, after 2 years and $80,000 and more sleepless nights than I can count, my children were coming home. Behind us, figuratively and literally, their mother was in custody. Mexican authorities had handed her over to U.S. Marshals at the border. She would face federal charges for international parental kidnapping, up to 10 years in prison for what she'd done. The aftermath. 6 months later. Recovery isn't linear. The therapist told me that during our first session, and I've learned exactly what she means. The first week home was chaos. Beautiful, overwhelming chaos. I'd kept their rooms exactly as they'd been, frozen in time like a museum exhibit to a life that used to exist. Walking them through the front door, watching them look around at toys they'd forgotten, beds they'd outgrown, drawings on the refrigerator that they'd made as toddlers, it was surreal. "This was mine?" my daughter asked, holding up a stuffed elephant she'd once refused to sleep without. "Yeah, sweetie. You called him Mr. Trunks. You took him everywhere." She stared at it for a long moment, turning it over in her hands. Some spark of recognition flickered in her eyes. She tucked it under her arm and carried it the rest of the day. The first few nights, neither of them could sleep in their own rooms. They were terrified, of being taken again, of waking up somewhere else, of all the fears children shouldn't have to carry. I made a bed of blankets and pillows on my bedroom floor, and we camped out together like survivors of some natural disaster. In a way, I suppose we were. My daughter took months to trust me. She would flinch when I raised my voice, even in excitement. She had nightmares about being taken away again. She asked about her mother constantly, confused by the idea that Mommy had done something wrong. I never badmouthed my ex-wife to them. Never. Even when they asked questions I didn't know how to answer. Why did Mommy take us to Mexico? I told them that Mommy was sick, that she made bad decisions because she was hurting inside, and that none of it was their fault. The therapist approved of this approach, though I wanted to say much worse. My son had to essentially learn who I was from scratch. He'd been 4 when she took him, too young to retain concrete memories, only impressions. The first time he called me Daddy, I had to excuse myself to the bathroom so he wouldn't see me cry. 6 months after returning home, we had a breakthrough. I was putting them to bed, reading stories, the same bedtime routine we'd had before everything fell apart, when my daughter grabbed my hand. Daddy. My heart stopped. She'd been calling me Dad since returning, when she called me anything at all. But, Daddy, that was what she'd called me before. Yeah, sweetheart. I remember now. I remember the zoo. And the pancakes you used to make. And how you'd carry us both even when your arms were tired. Tears were streaming down her face. I'm sorry I forgot. You never have to apologize for that, I said, pulling her close. You were little, and someone told you lies, and none of it was your fault. None of it. I love you, Daddy. 3 words. 3 words I'd been waiting 2 years to hear. I love you too. I never stopped. Not for one single second. The final chapter. My ex-wife was convicted 8 months after her arrest. The federal kidnapping charges, combined with evidence of document fraud and violation of the custody order, resulted in an 8-year sentence. I did not attend the sentencing. I didn't need to see her face again. I received a letter from her about a month after she went to prison. I haven't opened it. Probably never will. My therapist says that's okay, that forgiveness isn't something I owe her. That moving forward doesn't require absolution for what she did. The kids are in therapy twice a week. They're doing better, much better, but there are still hard days. My son sometimes asks when Mommy is coming back. My daughter has anger issues we're working through, rage at a mother who put her through trauma she's only beginning to understand. I have full custody now. Permanent and irrevocable. Her parental rights were terminated as part of the criminal proceedings. When she gets out in 8 years, probably less with good behavior, she won't have any legal claim to them. They'll be teenagers by then. They'll be able to decide for themselves if they want a relationship with her. I hope they choose whatever brings them peace. But that's their choice to make, not mine. Final thoughts. Writing this out has been harder than I expected. The emotions are still raw, even now. I look at my kids sleeping peacefully in their beds, in a home that's theirs, surrounded by toys and books and stability, and I think about how close I came to losing them forever. She stole 2 years of my children's lives. She tried to erase me from their memory. But love doesn't disappear, it just waits. My kids are home now. And she's in prison where she belongs. If you're a parent going through something like this, I want you to know a few things. Don't give up. Ever. The legal system is slow and expensive and frustrating, but it can work. Keep pushing. Document everything. Every communication, every expense, every sleepless night. You'll need it. Get help. You cannot do this alone. Lawyers, therapists, family, support groups, use every resource available. Your children remember more than you think. Even when they've been told lies. Even when they seem lost. Some part of them remembers love. It gets better. Slowly. Painfully. But it does get better. My daughter is 10 now. My son is 8. They fight over the TV remote and complain about homework and beg for later bedtimes. Normal kid stuff. Beautiful, mundane, normal stuff. Every night, I tuck them in. Every night, I tell them I love them. Every night, they say it back. That's all that matters now. TLDR, my ex-wife kidnapped my kids and fled to Mexico after losing a custody battle. It took 2 years and $80,000 in legal fees to get them back. She's now serving 8 years for international parental kidnapping. My kids are home, in therapy, and slowly healing. Never give up on your children. Update. Thank you all for the supportive messages. I'm not responding to the people asking for my ex-wife's name or location. She's facing justice through legal channels, and that's enough for me. For those asking about resources, I'll post some links in the comments about international custody disputes and the Hague Convention. If this helps even one parent in a similar situation, it was worth writing. Here's what I learned about persistence. Never give up. Ever. The legal system is slow and expensive and frustrating, but it can work. Your children remember more than you think. I won custody. The judge looked at the evidence and gave me my children. 2 weeks later, she kidnapped them and fled the country. For 2 years I didn't know if my kids were safe, if they were being fed, if they remembered me. She told them I abandoned them. She changed their names, enrolled them in school with fake documents, told everyone she was a widow, erased me from their lives. It cost me $80,000. 2 years of lawyers, investigators, international legal battles. All because she couldn't accept that the court said she was an unfit parent. When I finally found them, my daughter looked at me like I was a stranger. She said, "Mommy said you didn't want us." I broke down crying. The Mexican judge ordered immediate return. My ex was arrested. Federal charges for international kidnapping. 10 years possible. She got 8. 6 months of therapy later, my daughter grabbed my hand. I remember now. The zoo. The pancakes. How you'd carry us both. She was crying. "I'm sorry I forgot." You never have to apologize. Someone told you lies, and none of it was your fault. I love you, Daddy. 3 words. 3 words I've been waiting 2 years to hear. She stole 2 years of my children's lives. She tried to erase me from their memory. But love doesn't disappear, it just waits. My kids are home now. And she's in prison where she belongs.